So welcome everyone to join this webinar. My name is 𝗜𝗣𝗖𝗟𝗨. I will be your moderator for today's webinar on cities and low carbon transition, insightful knowledge and actions in the context of IPCC special report. Before we start, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to our organizing partners who have made this event possible. This includes the Future Earth Urban Knowledge and Action Network, which is known as 𝗘𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗀, and also the Future Earth 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗍. They provide substantial support for connections. And also the Future Earth Global Secretaries Hub in Taipei, together with the Center for Sustainability Science at 𝗥𝗲𝗽𝗖𝗟𝗍. And thank you for bringing us together for these really important conversations. Let me give you some context, some background of this webinar. Today's webinar is particularly timely and significant. As some of you might already know, in recent months, several scientists have gathered to prepare the very important IPCC special report on climate change and cities. This, as far as I know, this is in the stage of the draft, and after some review, this will be published by later in 2027. I'm not sure. Perhaps our own authors can give us some further information about this. And as the member of the Future Earth 𝗘𝗶𝘁𝗀, I think this is a very important timing, very important juncture for us to make some contributions to cities' transformations to a more low carbon stage. And what makes today's events especially valuable is that we are really honored to be able to have two leading authors from IPCC report. And also we have experts from ICLEI's Local Government for Sustainability, which is the world leading NGOs on urban sustainability. So in this webinar, they will bring important insights from global perspective to the local actions and covering critical research issues, but also how local government might face and to implement it. So now let me quickly go through the program for today's webinar. Firstly, I will invite our co-chair for the 𝗘𝗶𝘁𝗀𝗃 to give us some introductions about what is the Future Earth 𝗘𝗶𝘁𝗃. And then we will have the three key speakers to deliver 25 minutes for each presentations, then provides a very diverse perspective about urban low carbon transitions. And following that, we will have like 20 to 30 minutes of the conversation between the speakers, and that will open for the speakers to give some more interactions. And finally, we will open the floor for 15 to 20 minutes to allow more questions and answers directly from the participant, from our own audience. Then, so this will be totally like 1.5 hours to 2 hours webinar. For you, if you have questions during the presentation, please make use of the chat box on the Zoom screen. I think 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗨 will help with providing some guidance. You can input your own question in advance to the chat box. And after, and I'll collect them for question and answer sections. And of course, we will also open your own microphone later for asking questions more directly. Before we start, we generally need to take an important record about our own participants by taking a group photos. But now I think perhaps we can wait because there might be participants come a little bit later. So in between, I will ask for a stop for group photos. But now I'd like to introduce another host for the webinar. And later, I will introduce our own distinguished speakers one by one before their own presentation. So now, let's welcome the Professor 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗫𝗀𝗫. He is the professor at the Institute for Future Initiative at the University of Tokyo in Japan. And Professor Fukushi is currently the co-chair of the Future Earth Urban Can. And so now I like to hand over my microphone to Professor Fukushi. Please.
Thank you very much, Mayu. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. This is 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗫𝗀 of University of Tokyo. As co-chair of Future Earth Urban Knowledge and Action Network for Urban Can, I'd like to briefly introduce who we are and what we aim to do. Urban Can is one of the Future Earth's global research network. It was established to connect people who generate knowledge with those who use it, scientists, city government, businesses, and communities, all working together to make city more sustainable, inclusive, and resilient. One starting point is simple. Cities are central to the global sustainability challenge. They concentrate people, infrastructure, and innovation, but also vulnerability and emissions of carbon. Because of this, cities are uniquely positioned to lead their transformation toward a low carbon, nature positive, and equitable future. Urban Can's approach is transdisciplinary and action oriented. We work to co-design and co-produce knowledge that support decision making, not just in theory, but in real policies and investment. The network also serves as a platform to connect regional initiatives from Asia and Europe to Africa and the Americas, sharing insight and amplifying local success stories across a global context. Our activity range from synthesizing cutting-edge research to facilitate collaboration between the IPCC, ICLEI, and city networks to nurturing new participants, a new partnership that bridge academia and practice. Through this effort, we aim to make science more useful and cities more sustainable. Tonight's session on cities and low carbon transition is one example how Urban can create the bridge between global science and local action. Thank you very much, and I hope this discussion will inspire new connections and new collaboration under the Urban Can framework. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for Professor Fukushi for give us the introductions. And now I'd like to go to invite our first speaker. Our first speaker is let me see, is the Dr. 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗫𝗀𝗫𝗀𝗃. And she is the lead author of IPCC AR6, which published earlier. She is in the working group 3, and especially working on the mitigation issues. She is the senior researcher at the Scientific and Technological Research Council of Turkey. Dr. 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗨𝗦𝗜 will bring her deep expertise in the scientific and technological dimension of urban climate research. So now let's welcome Dr. 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗫𝗍𝗫. And also one more thing to add, Dr. 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗫𝗍𝗫 is also our own co-chair of Urban Can. Okay, thank you. Please.
Thank you very much, Wan-Yu. Thank you, everyone, and Future Earth, and also 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗨𝗦𝗜𝗍 for organizing this webinar. And thank you, all of you, for joining this webinar. I would like to share insights for knowledge and action and insights for cities and low-carbon transition in the context of the process that we're in of IPCC's special report on climate change in cities. I will organize my presentation into 5 points of emphasis. First, I would like to share with you how linking knowledge and action requires recognizing the important role of urban systems in addressing climate change. Then I will go into the agreed outline of the special report that has relevance for stakeholders across multiple levels of governance, and how connecting, as our co-chair also mentioned, connecting knowledge and action requires working across disciplines, evidence, data, and case studies, synthesizing all of that. And then I will touch upon, we will be discussing more also in the webinar, but new ways of collaboration that can be one of the enablers of realizing low-carbon energy transition for cities, and end with how Future Earth Urban Knowledge Action Network is working to broaden these connections and collaborations worldwide. So if I may start with my first point of emphasis, I would like to focus on the role of urban systems in addressing climate change, and how what we already know from the 6th assessment report of the IPCC that was published in 2022, and how we are going forward from that point of departure. So the 6th assessment report of the IPCC did make clear that urban systems are responsible for 67 to 72% of global emissions from a consumption-based point of view. And building on this evidence and how they concentrate people and these opportunities, this is one of the findings coming from the summary for policymakers, that urban areas can create opportunities to increase resource efficiency and significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions through the systemic transition of infrastructure in urban form through low-emission development pathways. So there are still development pathways, but in ways that can reach in the future net zero emissions. So this was one of the key findings. And the IPCC in the previous cycle did recognize that urban systems are a key aspect of the solution. So there are different types of cities. There can be established cities, rapidly growing cities, and those that are yet emerging and will be still built in the future. And there were 3 areas of strategies that was recognized to be important. First, reducing or changing urban energy and material use towards more sustainable production and consumption across all sectors. And this included through compact and efficient urban forms and supporting infrastructure. So people do need infrastructure to thrive and live in cities. Second, electrification in combination with switching to low carbon energy sources. And third, enhancing carbon uptake and storage in the urban environment through urban green and blue infrastructure. So these were the 3 main areas. And coming to the interaction of infrastructure and urban form, the report did recognize that compact and more walkable urban form can have many co-benefits, including through co-located jobs and housing, mental and physical health, lower resource demand, and saving land for agriculture, forestry, and other land use. So it distinguished, are we building cities for cars and just vehicles, or are we building cities for people who can live and be happy and thrive in those cities in a more sustainable future? So these were distinguished. The report also emphasized how urban areas are systems where multiple mitigation options, especially when integrated, can have cascading effects across transport, energy, buildings, land use, and behavior. So we can just visualize within an urban area how there are layers of land use, transport, buildings, and energy, and how each one of these layers are interacting. So what can be done in land use very much influences what can be done in transport and buildings. Are they co-located? Are they dispersed? And those distances, those positions of buildings also influence the energy. So, for example, better urban planning and service provisioning for people was found to have a potential to reduce, especially in established cities, energy demand by 20 to 25% by 2050 alone. Then that's a view within a single urban area, but what about how these urban areas interact across the energy system, across other urban areas, across the world, the region, or how they influence or put pressures on natural resources? So with this more broader perspective of the linkages of urban areas within the urban systems, the full potential for reducing consumption-based urban emissions to net zero greenhouse gas emissions was indicated to be met when emissions beyond cities' administrative boundaries are also addressed. Then governance. How is all of this going to be realized? There was case studies on integrated policy making for sector transitions, and one of this was focusing on the urban system point of view, and really emphasizing how policy integration, strategic goals, carefully coordinated mix of policy instruments. So are we doing this both for climate or affordable housing, and how do we bring all of that together? It's really required strong governance. And illustrative case studies with very important references indicated, for example, how a coordination mechanism for joining fragmented urban policy making could be very successful in cases such as Shanghai, or how African electromobility in different cities in Africa could be mobilized, or other shifts in mobility and service provisioning could be realized, and how each one of those could have enablers, and how each one of those could also have barriers, and what was the experiences coming out of these case studies. So a very rich foundation on which the next step of IPCC is now focusing on. So for this, I would like to go into the agreed outline of the special report. This was agreed in Sofia, Bulgaria last year in one of the IPCC panel meetings, building upon the scoping meeting that was held earlier in the year. As a result, the agreed outline, which is now the author teams have worked on it, but it has 5 chapters. The 5 chapters are cities in the context of climate change, framing of the report, cities in a changing climate, their trends, challenges, and opportunities, and the diversity of these experiences. Then 2 chapters, one focusing on actions and solutions to reduce urban risks and emissions, and second, focusing on the how to facilitate and accelerate change. And all of this is coming together in the 5th chapter that is focusing on solutions by city types and regions. And let me just emphasize that this is a special report and is bringing scientists and expertise from all 3 working groups of the IPCC. So mitigation, adaptation, physical science bases, and all of these expertise are going to be represented in the special report. I would like to focus on 2 of these, the central chapters. So what is this chapter? What is the agreed outline, at least, mentioning on actions and solutions to reduce urban risks and emissions? For example, it includes common and context-specific urban mitigation options for spatial planning, energy, heating, cooling, electricity, existing and new buildings and infrastructure, mobility and transport, water, land, food, demand-side measures, and behavioral change, and cross-sectoral integrated approaches in urban systems such as circularity. So that's on the mitigation side. On the adaptation side, is also including common and context-specific urban adaptation and disaster risk reduction options for managing risks in natural, ecological, and human systems, including but not limited to physical infrastructure, urban nature-based solutions, and ecosystem-based adaptation, and planning and social policies such as relocation, health systems, early warning systems. Then a myriad of other topics: evaluation of city actions across mitigation adaptation, urban observation and modeling tools, local risks assessments, integrating mitigation and adaptation into sustainable development and just transitions, metrics for assessing mitigation adaptation options, and case studies, best practice, and stories, also linking with the other chapter in the report with the case studies as well. Then the 4th chapter is how to facilitate and accelerate change. The agreed outline emphasized new ways of planning under and for uncertainty, climate and information services to enable action, innovation in governance, urban planning policies, decision-making, technology, urban service provision, energy access and shelter, infrastructure, social systems and finance, and many others in a diverse setting, acknowledging also diverse capacities of cities. Institutional capacities, competencies, inclusive multi-level governance, indigenous knowledge, policies for behavioral and lifestyle changes, finance, financial instruments, and holistic planning and systems thinking approach towards decarbonized and climate resilient cities was also emphasized, along with structural inequalities, enabling conditions, political will and leadership, and conflicting goals, as well as trade-offs. So very comprehensive. But the point that we're at now, the author teams have worked very hard. They first came together in a first lead author meeting in Osaka, Japan, then in a second lead author meeting in Mombasa, Kenya, both very also enriching settings for the author teams themselves. And now we're at the stage of the first order drafts expert review. And this is very important because as provided in this website, and we can share also the link, but IPCC is seeking experts to review the first order of the special report on climate change and cities that has been prepared by the author teams, and you need registration in order to realize this, to review and provide your comments between 17th October to 12th December 2025. So please take advantage of this opportunity. Where is this in the process? So after the first order draft, there will be a second order draft, but this time it's not only expert review with experts and reviewers, it's also including government. So this is the only time that it's for expert review. Then it will go through a process, going to the summary for policymakers, again, government review, and seeking approval of the key findings, and then the publication in 2027, early 2027, as Wan Yu also mentioned. The ambition of IPCC and the co-chairs of IPCC is that this report will be very relevant for multiple levels. And this does include city networks. So city networks are working on a diversity of topics, inclusive science-based collaborative approaches, just carbon neutral futures, working collaboratively to achieve carbon neutrality, moving from planning to implementation, access to sustainable energy, and many more. Science-based targets, inclusive and resilient climate action, city to city, city to region, local to global, local to national connections, people-centered sustainable urban development for all, achieving net zero emissions through supporting renewable cities and regions, and many others. So this report does have to be relevant in the sense of addressing also the expectations of city networks, also healthy and moving cities, sustainable integrated urban development, and biodiversity, and people-centered cities once again. At the other end, also the governments, because governments are preparing their nationally determined contributions. This was a report coming from UN Habitat that just showed what is the percentage of urban content within nationally determined contributions. And currently, only 39% of nationally determined contributions have only moderate urban content, 34% have low or no urban content, and it's only the 27% that is including strong urban elements. So this is also another target audience that the special report may decide to provide evidence for. This brings me to how much it is important to connect knowledge and action. We need working across disciplines, working across evidence, data, and case studies. Recently, there has been a systematic global stock take of over 50,000 urban climate change studies. And in this map, it's possible to see the points where there are relatively more case studies around the world than others. The shades of the hexagons is showing how many studies there are per city in that particular location. So there are many case studies from Asia, but dispersed across different cities, and we see a regional also inset in this figure. There's also interactive website of this atlas. So I just took two examples. Also with the co-organizers of this webinar, I just searched some Japanese cities, and I just searched cities in Taiwan. The first graph is showing how there are over 400 publications for Tokyo, which is one of the mega cities, and we all know. Then when we go to cities in Taiwan, we see that there are over or close to 100 publications through different time and years for Taichung, including the CO2 reduction for a low-carbon community, a city perspective in Taiwan. But for example, as is the case all over the world, there are less case studies focusing on small and fast-growing cities, and these do remain substantially underrepresented in urban climate studies. So for example, 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗍 or other urban areas, they are having lower number of publications. So this also call for you and the network and researchers that joined us today and others to focus on maybe less studied urban areas. Then bring together disciplines. There can be different disciplines, of course, but how can we link this? And health and climate change is coming across as a very important area. This is just, for example, one of the multiple lines of evidence that underscores how climate change is the greatest global health threat globally through people and through different, we have infectious diseases, we have air quality, and many others. And we need more studies, for example, that can link how mitigation pathways or scenarios or sustainable development scenarios can be linked to some of these health co-benefits. And this is just an example how air quality benefits or climate cost savings could be realized in some of these, and region by region, urban area by urban area, these were estimated just as an example. And recently, a multidimensional indicator was used to categorize some of these cities and look into their air quality concentrations and total emissions of particulate matter 2.5, which is fine inhalable particles, and where are these concentrating, and if there was alternative paths, how these could also represent the potential of saving human lives. So just for this group of cities, less than 100 actually, but even here, 120,408 human lives could be saved due to better air quality according to this estimation. This brings me, I will just touch upon briefly, the importance of new ways of collaboration and how this can be one of the enablers of realizing low-carbon energy transition for cities. This is one of the publications. It did come through a very collaborative process, and some of you'll have the opportunity to listen later next in the webinar. But possibilities for new ways of collaboration. The focus was on the top 200 cities and 500 companies by greenhouse gas emissions as key actors, how they had or did not have currently net zero targets, and if the cities and companies that already have targets could bring their co-located actors on board, how this could increase the reduction potential, and this is from a greenhouse gas emissions point of view, and how this is representing an untapped potential that could accelerate transformations for going forward. So this is on the one side, it's the urban areas. On the other side, the right-hand side is the companies, but each one is ordering these key actors from highest to lowest emissions. And the top curve that we see on the left-hand side is actually the top 200 urban areas with or without net zero targets at the moment. And the lower curve is the urban areas with net zero targets, so it's not always the top emitters that are putting net zero targets. And it was a comparison if these top emitters, both on the side of urban areas and companies, and how they could influence one another. So that's the details coming from the publication. And then really asking, can target alignment between cities and companies deliver multiple times impact? So those companies with science-based targets, in areas located in areas with or without net zero targets at the urban level, could they do some kind of influencing? And what would be the impact of this? In the end, there was a map like this, also showing some of the hotspots. And I would like to point out that one of these hotspots is Tokyo, because it's a top 200 urban area with the net zero targets. It's hosting the largest number of 500 top companies, and it has 27 top emitters co-located in the city, and less than half of the firms have adopted any kind of target, and only 2 had science-based targets. So if this and similar examples if there was influencing between cities with targets or companies with targets and trying to just adopt or align these targets across these co-located urban areas, what would be the impact? And we do see an increase in the reduction potential. Another example I would like to give is now coming from the European perspective. There's a mission in Europe for climate neutral and smart cities. And in the expression of interest stage, there was over 300 cities trying to work towards this. And then close to 100, exact number is 112 cities were selected to be these cities seeking to be climate neutral and just testing and finding some solutions. So this was an analysis based on their questionnaire, what they thought was important, how they were going to achieve it, what were their enablers, and this is coming from that perspective on city evidence to also support the low carbon theme of this webinar. So according to the analysis of that particular group of cities, there were some thematic groupings. This figure, for example, is comparing the cities in axes of horizontal ambition. So if they are seeking for the entire urban area or, for example, only a district, and the vertical axis is for collaboration. Are they collaborating with all of the possible stakeholders, including citizens? Are they listening to their views? So the collaboration is really all of the entire stakeholders of the urban area. So there was some thematic groupings of how these quadrants came into play. And the analyses went that way. But one thing I would like to emphasize is all of these different thematic groupings of cities identify different favorable conditions. But if we look into the first group, all of these cities, 112 of them said, having a supportive local research environment is very important for my city to be reaching its climate targets, to work together, to address, there can be energy poverty, energy access issues, but it's very important for that city to work with the local research environment, with the local researchers, local information, local knowledge, while also collaborating, of course. But this was very important. Then having a growing, young, educated, and skilled population was seen important. And some of the lessons that could be taken from this analysis for networks like UrbanCan could be, we do need to have more collaboration across our research environments and stakeholders to support cities in these journeys and endeavors. Lastly, as my fifth point of emphasis, I would like to emphasize how the Future Earth Urban Knowledge Action Network is working to broaden these connections and collaborations worldwide. Recently, there has been a publication led by 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟 and the entire team of the network, but this came out as Reimagining Urban Science for Global Sustainability and identifying the 5 strategic key areas. So it's recognized that cities and urban regions are at the forefront of transformations toward global sustainability. And there was a co-design process of finding research questions, and there are many, many research questions in the publication. So if you're interested, please take a look. These are just some of those questions. So for example, what kind of political, institutional, social, economic knowledge and practices can hinder or facilitate accelerated transitions? How can we recognize, support, and enhance institutional governance, finance, human and technological capacity, and also to amplify the voices across the world? How can equity, inclusivity, and justice be embedded at the core of urban sustainability transitions? How do communities and social organizations solve these challenges? And how can urban systems really integrate mitigation and adaptation efforts for more sustainable and resilient development? Is it coming through nature-based solutions? Is it other solutions? So we need more evidence in this aspect. Overall, based on these research questions, there are 5 key priorities: accelerating urban sustainability transformations, ensuring equity and inclusivity, amplifying innovation, negotiating complexity and systemic risks, and navigating global environmental change. And all of these 5 priorities are interrelated. So addressing them will require more collaboration among these priorities as well, even some shared databases, and policies, learning, all of that. So with this, I would just like to thank you very much from all the participants from around the world and also our co-organizers. So thank you very much for your kind attention.
Okay, thank you very much for 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟 for the very comprehensive presentation covering wide issue, especially the increasingly focus on cities and diversity issues and important research gaps in smaller city, potential research areas and potential co-benefits and collaboration, etc. So now let's bring you to our second speakers, Professor 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗨𝗦𝗜𝗩. She is actually the coordinating lead author for the IPCC Special Report on Climate Change and Cities. And she also the distinguished professor at the Fenner School of Environment and Society at Australian National University. Professor Bai has been our own co-chair for 𝗜𝗏𝗏𝗀. She was our previous co-chair, and she contributes the quite critical role for preparing this special report. And today she is going to talk about city as a transformative agent for climate safe future. So please, Professor Bai, the microphone is yours.
I hope you can all see my slide. So thank you so much, Wei, for your kind introduction. And good evening, good morning, depending on where you're joining, everyone. And I would really like to thank our local co-organizers, in addition to our Future Earth CAN, that is Future Earth Taipei, Future Earth Global Secretariat in Taipei, Taipei Hub, and Center for Sustainability Science at the 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗍𝗫𝗏. So I would also like to acknowledge our traditional owners, the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people, on whose land I'm joining from, and pay my respect to their elders past and present. So today I'm going to talk about cities as transformative agent for climate safe future, drawing on some of our recent work. So I'll start from going through some of the background very briefly, and then focus on cities as a transformative agent. What do I mean, and what sort of recent progresses has been made along this line? And then I would like to briefly mention, also talk about beyond climate, because cities' role beyond climate is also very important, and introduce some of our efforts, try to link cities to the planetary boundaries and Earth system boundaries. And then I'll end with a very brief introduction or some update from the city's special report, IPCC Cities Special Report. So I think this audience doesn't really need much introduction why cities is important, and also 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟 gave really comprehensive update on the importance of cities, their impact. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. But we know that cities emit 75 or 78% of all CO2 from final energy use, that is from IPCC SR6. And these are some of the current emission. But I think it is also important that when we talk about cities, we also talk about the future need, because we know that there are many new cities are being built, and there are many cities in the developing world that actually they are not exactly having a proper level of infrastructure, including housing or access to water or sanitation, those sort of things. So if we are trying to provide appropriate level of infrastructure to these new coming urban citizens, as well as the existing developing country cities, then actually that will require up to 226 gigaton of CO2 emission by 2050. And many of you are probably following what is the remaining carbon budget if we are to stay within 1.5 or 2.0 warming above the pre-industrial level. And this is almost the entire remaining carbon budget. And this really emphasizes why it is so important to look at cities in terms of climate change. And of course, Xiao also mentioned that, cities are also the places where lots of climate impact are actually happening. So globally, we know about 70% of cities are already dealing with the effects of climate change, and also nearly all are at further risks. And these risks include flood, heat wave, drought, fire, and which many of them are in turn impacting on our food security. So some of the photos below are from the flood in different cities, part of the cities in Europe and in China. And these are, never unprecedented, never seen before kind of things now are happening in cities quite often, actually. So the IPCC report, the SR6 report, AR6 report, they also show that, the observed and projected impacts of climate change in urban areas. So from the Working Group 2 report, it can, clearly be seen that cities are projected to face increasing frequency and magnitude of natural disaster, and mostly with increasing adverse impact to cities. And we know that at above medium or even higher level of confidence, that these impacts are attributable to climate change. And understanding what makes cities and urban systems more resilient is really crucial. So transformation is really frequently mentioned and called for in global assessment report. We know that most recent IPCC synthesis report points out that there is a narrowing window of opportunity to climate resilient development. And on the right side, it shows the 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗪 assessment on the drivers and impacts of biodiversity loss. Really, the report really stresses that the imperatives of transformative change. So we know that transformative changes are needed, but we also know that this is really difficult. And it is because of the, many economic, institutional, and social cultural barriers there that really inhibits this kind of system level transition. So now comes to the main point of this talk. We really need our cities to become transformative agent. And this is a concept we're putting forward in our ARC, Australian Research Council Laureate Fellowship Project. And its first paper just came out in the last July 2025. And what do we mean by this? I think cities as transformative agent here is really a novel reconceptualization of cities in global sustainability or in the context of climate safe future. And here we look at this kind of reconceptualization, we look at cities beyond the culprit or victim. So usually when we talk about the CO2 emission, we tend to look at cities as the culprit. And when we talk about the impact on cities, we tend to look at them as victims. But we really need to go beyond this culprit or victim framing and really focus on the agency. So this is looking at cities beyond the place or the sum of actions within it, the current one, but really see what cities actually can do to change the course. So here we typically include three kinds of characteristics. We define three kinds of characteristics here. The first one is that these cities as transformative agents, they should be able to change their own trajectory. So they take conscious decision and actions to really drastically change their own future trajectories. And the second element here is actively reach out and help others. Because no matter how well you do in individual cities, unless other cities are also doing the same as you're doing, basically you cannot really resolve by yourself the global change sort of problems. So you not only need to be striving to be a front runner and, but also need to proactively influence others to follow, alternative trajectories, just as you are doing. And the third element in these cities as transformative agent is that they need to build a new configuration, a new network, working with other cities to create new system configuration. For example, like build networks in order to enhance resilience. So I'll try to unpack this a bit further one by one using some of our recent research. So it is very important to understand cities as transformative agent. And in doing so, I think there are a couple of really important questions that we really need to ask and answer through our research. So we really need to build theoretical and empirical knowledge on, for example, how cities evolve and transform and what kind of trajectories do they really follow. And can or how cities accelerate transformation within and beyond their own boundaries. And how cities can build network in order to enhance a networked resilience, and what kind of governance innovations can set them onto these accelerated sort of pathways. So in order to understand the first element, which is understanding the trajectory of cities, to me, the conceptual foundation of sustainability transformation in cities really lies in the evolutionary sort of perspective, which is the recognition that cities are complex system that's subject to constant change. And that this kind of insight is really based on extensive case studies in Asian cities. And if cities are really can be conceptualized as evolving entities, then it is actually indeed possible to actively pursue alternative sort of pathways. And to me, that in order to understand how cities evolve, to me, it is very important to understand the urban sustainability experiment, because we know there are many innovative practices that are going on in different cities, and many cities are actually, trying to figure out solutions to their, to the challenges they are facing. And in doing so, they extensively conduct experimentation. So what do I mean by urban sustainability experiment? These are sustainability experiments, some of the planned initiatives that really embody high levels of novel social technical configuration, which likely to lead to substantial sustainability gains. So these are the definition of urban sustainability experimentation. And I believe this is the very first paper on this particular topic, which was published in 2010, I think. So here we really examined, looked at 30 highly praised best practices of urban sustainability across different Asian cities. And we attempted to understand the patterns and pathways of these practices. And here we developed a 5-tier framework to understand urban sustainability transition, which is triggers, actors, linkages, barriers, and pathways. So we're here heavily drawing on this framework in our work to understand sustainability experiment and transition. And in this particular paper, we actually found more than half of this experimentation actually are upscaled or duplicated in our other contexts, which is really indicating that such experiments of cities do have very strong potential to bring about sustainability gains. So when we talk about sustainability experimentation, it is very important for us to really understand why some cities can be quite successful in conducting continuous sort of sustainability experimentation and become a front-runner cities. So in this paper, we looked at 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗍, city, which is a city in Japan, which has gone from one of the most polluted cities in the world in the 1950s to one of the most accoladed cities for their environmental achievements and sustainability in the world. So these front-runner cities can really produce environmental and economic benefit and opportunities, and in this case, both for themselves and also beyond their boundaries, and contribute towards sustainability transition. So it is really important for us to understand the mechanism behind such remarkable transition within a single city, the making of front-runner cities. So in this case, we found that this kind of success really are built on a succession of lead actors and also a series of self-reinforcing feedbacks within their internal systems. So in this case, you have this succession of leaders from the citizens group, the women's group, the doctors, and then the business, and then the local government, and then also the support from the national government, and then the recognition of international society or international context has really reinforced the internal sort of dynamic. So this series of succession of reinforcing loops really created what we call positive inertia and embeddedness. So this what we mean here is that the system level emergent property where positive approaches are embedded into the city's identity and therefore not really influenced by short-term political cycle. And this is very important in the context of cities because we all know some cities are doing great at some point, but when a new mayor come in, he can basically trash all the initiatives and start anew. But by having this kind of building on this kind of positive inertia and embeddedness, any new coming mayors, it will be difficult for them to actually completely change the trajectory. So inertias are not always necessarily to be negative. We need to really build positive inertia for some of the good practices that are happening in cities. So it is important that we look at cities not only really change their own trajectories, but also play a role in transformation beyond their city boundaries. And there are several aspects. The first bit is, can they really influence in terms of vertically, can they have this vertical upscaling where they can influence their upper level government to change their practice? So in this paper, we looked at can policy learning from a particular city's experiment actually can be upscaled and then change the practice in for example, national government. And we looked at the evolution of policy, context in Shanghai. And what I found here is there is a nested structure of innovation for low carbon transition in Shanghai. And how it works is that within Shanghai, they have a series of small sort of initiatives that are conducted within the city. And the learning from this kind of experimentation of small initiatives or projects, they're extracted to inform the design of low carbon policy within the city at the city level. And then, there are many this kind of cities that are designated as the low carbon, model cities. And then the learning from these various cities are also extracted to inform the national level on policy making. So here we call it a nested structure of innovation. And this really shows that small innovative practices at a lower scale actually does have the potential to actually reflect it and then change the practice at the upper level government. So we talked about these vertical linkages, but what about the horizontal linkages? So we also looked at how urban experiment actually work across different cities. Again, here we looked at the case of Shanghai and looked at how I think it's energy performance contract, how this kind of innovative practices that were quite popular in USA and then Europe was contextualized and become quite popular in Shanghai and other cities in China, for example. So what we found here is that somehow this contextualization process in itself is not an easy process. So we looked into this process of adopting, successful initiatives from elsewhere, and we found that actually So we found actually that the post-experimentation adoption by other cities and contextualization, actually they do require mobilization and realignment of different actors, resources, and institutional arrangement within the process of learning, which involves much more than simple duplication and basic copy and paste. And therefore, this particular process, in many ways, is an innovation in itself. So here we consider the contextualization of an innovation and try to learn from others in itself is actually equivalent to a new innovation. So cities also play a broader role, not only within themselves or among the cities, or influence other the upper level government policy concerning cities, but they can also play a very important role of in terms of transition in other sectors. For example, in this case, it's transition through cities and the role of cities in energy transition. So here, what we looked at is we analyzed 122 policy documents from 39 Chinese cities, which are all about developing the hydrogen energy strategy. So here, what we found is that there are, very myriad and critical roles of cities in fostering technological innovation and in this emergent hydrogen economy through their policy support and active investment. And we could also find that many cities are really moving ahead of their national government, and by doing this, they're creating early momentum and laying the foundation for future scale transition. But there's also, the study also show a very clear need for this kind of very city-based bottom-up initiatives to be better guided and channeled toward clean hydrogen development. And this really emphasizes the need for a clear and strong national policy guidance so that, the cities doesn't just end up with over competition and also just, tracing for hydrogen development without considering whether this is a clean hydrogen or just hydrogen based on fossil fuel, which is not desirable. So we consider that more research on this kind of proactive role of cities in technological innovation and sustainability transition is really needed. So as I mentioned, the second component of this cities as transformative agent is that how they can actually help others and bring others along the journey. So here, one important concept we found is proactive influencing and collective action. We would like to emphasize here. So cities can really influence others to change as well through gentle nudging, or they can also through forming some kind of social tipping point, and also through city-to-city collaboration and things like that. So I think in Qi's talk, she just introduced this paper where cities should be really how they can collaborate with companies and what kind of potential they can show. So I'm not going to go into detail of this, but the important point here is that it's not only city-to-city collaboration or city to, within their governmental structure, but also across the silo, across the sector, that cities and companies, they should really actively reach out to each other and help each other, where they can really realize a much bigger potential in by doing so. So this is also the map, I think, mentioned by Qiu. So here, another very important aspect in order to encourage the city-to-city collaboration is the concept of altruist cities. So here, altruism, here what we mean is a social behavior that really benefits others, often at a cost to the performer of the behavior. So in this article, which was published in Science last year, I made a strong case for cities to adopt this kind of altruistic approach. And there are, different types of altruism. For example, some of them are kinship-based. For example, some sister cities or cities that are located next to each other, they tend to help each other because they feel, they are sort of connected to those cities. And also there are second type of altruism, which is reciprocal. Basically, this means I help you this time, and in the expectation that next time you help me. So this kind is built on this reciprocal mechanism. But the third type is based on social learning and status building. Basically, I would like to do it, and because some of the best cities or most, admired cities, they are doing so. And also by doing this kind of altruistic act, I build up my own reputation and sort of status. And important point here is that we don't really care what kind of motivation a cities might adopt in terms of, building this altruistic sort of approach. Any of this, whatever the motivation, it's all fine as far as you can really open your mind into helping others and then, engage in these altruistic cities. And I think recently there are some cities in real world cities, they would like to adopt this kind of concept in their practice. And I hope to be able to report on that in near future. And we're also conducting some quantitative modeling based analysis, try to prove some of this, find empirical evidence of this altruistic behavior of different cities. And the last component of the cities as transformative agent is on the building network resilience across different cities, how cities can forge new system configuration and dynamics through proactively building networks. So the idea of this building network functional resilience came from our observation of the behavior of cities during COVID-19, where, the Wuhan city, once they were hard hit by COVID-19, many cities in the world sent in aid materials and then, various different aid helps to Wuhan city. And once Wuhan and other Chinese cities had recovered, they reciprocated really strongly, returned the favor. So by watching, really observing this kind of city to city helping each other sort of behavior, we got this, idea, that inspiration that probably we should really look at cities, how they can build resilience, functional resilience across, through building networks. So this idea was further articulated again in another piece of article published in Science last year. So we are actively promoting how we can actually forge this kind of new system configuration and build actively network resilience across different cities. And there is at least very strong imperative, because no cities can be really prepared for all kind of hazard. I mean, we just talked about just from climate, there are increasing frequency and increasing severity in terms of hazard. And you cannot really expect each and every cities to be prepared for all kind of hazard and at all time by themselves. So it's very important they should look at build network resilience by partnering with others. And I would like to briefly talk about the work that work of the Earth Commission, which is looking at how cities and businesses can be connected to the planetary boundary or safe and just Earth system boundaries, and what they can do basically towards a just world on a safe planet. So here is the idea of this safe and just Earth system boundaries was put forward by the Earth Commission, which was published in Nature 2 years ago, led by Wilhelm Rockström. And this paper is talking about that one. And then there was another paper published last year in Lancet Planetary Health. So here we put forward the idea of the importance of going to our future vision of living in a just world on a safe planet. So in looking at this, my role within the Earth Commission is leading a work stream or working group, trying to translate this kind of planetary boundary or Earth system boundaries into cities and businesses. So linking cities and businesses to planetary or Earth system boundaries, this is a new, again, sort of new area, and there are a lot of, knowledge gaps in doing so. And in this particular article, which was published in Nature a couple of years ago, we articulated, the importance of doing this and also some of the knowledge gaps in doing so. So we have this, for example, the knowledge gaps include the need for developing common procedures and the need for focusing on interactions of different domains within this planetary boundary or Earth system boundaries, and the need for acknowledging the dynamics and advocate for justice and equity, and how can we support monitoring and accountability, and how can we establish government mechanism to actually support this kind of action within cities and companies, and how can we design incentives to encourage them to do so. And we know that this kind of, subnational action linking their action to planet boundaries actually work through setting science-based target. And here we looked at more than 2,000 companies and their different target setting, and we found that companies that set science-based target, basically their target are aligning with 1.5 degree Paris Agreement, and there are, this is much more ambitious compared to the other companies that adopt other kind of target setting, and both of them are actually more ambitious than the national pledges to the Paris Accord. So this really shows that mobilizing cities and companies at the subnational level really work and extremely important. So as part of this Earth Commission work, we looked at how we can actually translate this Earth system boundaries for cities and businesses. We reviewed and synthesized the methodology. We developed principles in doing so and presented a protocol of how this can be done. So SHARE is also part of a very important member of this work. I think I don't have much time left, so I will try to go very brief. So here are the list of the 10 principles of translation. If you're interested, please look up this paper, which was published last year in Nature Sustainability. And here are the conceptual framework, and building blocks, how the Earth system boundaries can be actually connected to actors like cities and companies. And I think the importance of actors and agency really need to be better reflected in broader societal goal settings, such as SDGs. So I think the SDG did a very good job in articulating the societal aspirational goal, and it made it very clear where we need to go, but it falls short what needs to be done, how much, and most importantly, by whom for us to get there. So here, I really argue that it is very important for us to, for the post-2030 global goals, to have a very explicit target for cities and businesses in order to really mobilize this kind of important agency of cities and businesses. And of course, in the paper, I articulated all the difficulties, and we fully understand why this is very challenging. But I think the motivation will be, we know the galvanizing power of this kind of positive goal setting to, to really mobilize this kind of cities and businesses. So I think we shouldn't be really shy away because it's challenging, but really seriously engage how this can be done. So finally, come to the IPCC Cities Special Report, for which I'm serving as the coordinating lead author for the chapter 4, which is how to accelerate change. Here, this is another opinion piece I did for Science before even the IPCC Cities Special Report started. So I think here we could see, a major shift in terms of focus, in terms of the importance of cities and their recognition. We could see that cities have really moved from periphery to the center stage within the IPCC assessment cycles. And this special report will really be important in terms of shaping the policy and action at the city level. So here, I think the IPCC has done a good job in preparation for this special report. For example, there was 2018 IPCC Cities and Climate Change Science Conference, where we identified 6 research priorities, like, expand the climate observation, and look at urban climate interactions, and focus on informal settlement, and look at disruptive technology, and focus on urban transformation, and also put this climate change in the global sustainability context rather than looking at them by themselves. And I think many of these points were reflected in the outline of the new city special report. So as Xiao just mentioned, the first order draft is out for review. So please do register and help us to improve this report. And the 4th chapter that I'm leading, which is about how to accelerate change. We are really looking at, what are some of the barriers, what are the key enablers, who are the key actors, and what kind of key innovations are there or actually needed. So I cannot really talk too much about in detail on this. So if you're interested, please do register and become the expert reviewer and give us your feedback. So I'm going to stop there. And then here are some of the references that I mentioned in this talk. And I would like to just show this as a way of acknowledging many of my co-authors and some other key papers. So yeah, thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you so much for 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗨 to bring very recent insights about the cities and trying to make the connection of how city contribute to carbon emission, but also is most impacted by the risk and climate risk. And also emphasize the city need to out of the victim mindset and to be more proactive, to take a more proactive role as an agents and to do the transformative change. And of course, there's a social cultural barriers, and also there's a contextual difference, and all of this need the urban to be able to evolve together with several agents and with a lot of collaborations and innovations. So now this make a really good connection to our own next speakers. Our next speaker is the Dr. 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗖𝗍. Please correct my the pronunciation later for your name. And he is the head of urban research of innovations and development team at ICLEI. I think many of you already know ICLEI play a very important role to make a connection from the research to the policy interface, and also has worked closely with local governments for several issues. So now I'd like to invite Dr. 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗍𝗍 to give his presentations.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Wan-Yu, for the kind introduction, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. And it's definitely a pleasure to be part of this conversation. I would like to thank the organizers, Future Earth Urban Knowledge Action Network, Urban Working Group Future Earth, Taipei, Future Earth Global Secretariat, but of course Center for Sustainability Science at 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗍𝗍. So thanks for having me. I appreciate that, and my sincere appreciation to my fellow panelists for their insightful and inspiring presentations. I personally really enjoyed this. You have set the scene remarkably well, Xiao and 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗍𝗍. Your reflection and examples have provided a strong foundation and valuable context for my intervention. So it's a pleasure, definitely, to share this panel with such knowledgeable and dedicated colleagues. So talking a little bit about cities as the sort of levels of governments at the forefront of low carbon transition. The reality is what happens in cities will determine whether we meet our global climate goals. As 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗍 highlighted in her presentations, cities are responsible for emitting 75% or more of all global CO2 emissions from final energy use, and also house more than half of the world's population. This is growing. And they are where global commitments become tangible. Local governments are on the front lines of sustainable urban development and climate action, leading the charge, if you wish, in translating international frameworks into action people can see and can feel in their communities. However, tackling the climate crisis is not just about reducing carbon emissions or tracking carbon metrics. It's, as Cher said, it's about transforming the systems that shape how we live. Ultimately, this is about creating cities where people can live flourishing lives and where the ecosystems are integral to our planets and can support the planet to thrive further. So I think when we are talking about low carbon transition in cities, from one perspective, we can look into key enablers and probably three key enablers that I would like to discuss today are multi-level governance, transformative innovation, and finance, as these are key to enabling local governments and cities to lead the low carbon transition. They directly address the three persistent challenges our cities globally are facing today: coordination, direction, and capital. Multi-level governance obviously provides the coordination. It links the national policy to regional and subnational institutions and local action, both vertically and horizontally. So everyone is working towards shared goals. And obviously, this is the mechanism to connect the work in a given nation, in a given country, to international commitments and goals. Transformative agenda serving innovation, which we'll come to it down the line, provides the direction. It gives cities a clear sort of North Star. It gives a clear North Star, focusing creativity and investment on systemic changes rather than just incremental improvements that are not enough for the shift and transition that we need. And then we come to innovative finance, which provides a capital, and it turns those mission-aligned ideas into viable, bankable, financeable projects and initiatives that can be scaled and replicated at the speed and a scale that we really need. So together, these three levers are mutually reinforcing. Governance enables innovation to flourish, innovation attracts finance, and finance sustains and scales transformation. When aligned, these three, they move cities beyond isolated projects toward coordinated system-level change, something that Cher was focusing in her presentation as well. The system-level change, the foundation for a resilient low-carbon urban transition. So, but let's discuss why multi-level governance is the operating system for low-carbon transition in cities. And what makes it necessary and how it works in practice. So the reality is local governments are the first responders to climate impacts and the primary interface for services, planning, mobility, building, waste, energy access, you name it. So they hold the granular knowledge, what works at the neighborhood level, which incentives citizens respond to, and where the barriers truly are, from the SMEs finance constraints, permitting bottlenecks, landlord-tenant split incentives for retrofit initiatives, etc. So this proximity of this level of governments gives local governments unique implementation power and insight, but not automatically the tools to act at a scale. And that brings us to the critical gap many cities face today: the mismatch. Mandates outpace means. So in many developed countries, decentralization is oftentimes seen as a really powerful approach to enable local level governments to conduct and support and guide and implement the transition, low carbon transition particularly. But decentralization has often expanded responsibilities of local governments, but not proportionately authority, capacity, and finance for that. So typical symptoms is unfunded mandates, short project cycles, siloed data, and limited ability to shape, for instance, utility regulations or standards or fiscal instruments that sit at higher tiers of governments. What it results? Cities are tasked with delivering net zero outcomes, but the levers, tax policy, larger scale infrastructure, finance, market rules, etc., often sit somewhere else. So decentralization alone obviously doesn't deliver transformation. That's why we frame multi-level governance as a necessity, not a nice to have idea. So the imperative is clear. Multi-level governance is no longer considered ideal, but rather necessity. To move from pilots to systems change, local action must be backed by national frameworks and regional instruments. A multi-level governance aligns policies, finance, and accountability across different tiers of governments, so local innovation scales and national ambitions becomes implementable. I think a good example could be the NDCs, particularly in this period that updated NDCs are being submitted. And this is 2025, right? And I think what we observed in the previous round of NDCs, the national determined contribution, was that like there is a mismatch between what a national government is committing to as opposed to the tools available for their local governments to actually implement the initiatives and actions to achieve what has been committed by that national government. So in practice, coherence on targets and data measurement, procurement standards, eligibility rules for climate finance, clear rules, all of it. So the clear rules so that the progress is trackable across levels. All of this can be sort of achieved through a properly operationalized multi-level governance tailored to a given context. If it's necessary, the question becomes, how do we operationalize multi-level governance? So I think partnership and across sectors, but also across the scale is necessary. And I think we all agree that operational multi-level governance is built through structured partnerships. Vertical, as it's city level to regional and provincial level to national level ministries and regulators, but also supranational and international bodies. And when it comes to horizontal, it's not only within the local or national governments, talk ministries to another ministries or different departments of the cities, which is actually a challenge. If you look into some of the convenings that happens, some of the ministers or some of the city departments feel excluded from the conversation because oftentimes UNFCCC ministers or city departments are like, focused on environment, or energy. But the reality is a lot of other departments and other ministries are sort of driving actions within the community that impacts the environment and impacts climate. So I think that horizontal connection is very crucial, but also city to cities connections, and then metropolitan collaboration, but also engagement with other stakeholders, public-private coalitions as an examples. So joint investment pipelines, standardized project prep templates, shared monitoring, reporting, verification systems, pooled purchasing, and place-based policies that connects local demand to national incentives and international agreements would be enabled by multi-level governments. And the effect will be the cities shift from policy implementers to policy co-creators, bringing lived urban realities into national rulemaking while gaining access to scaled finance and technical support and capacity that they do need to be able to drive low carbon transition. So the bottom line is that local proximity tells us what must be done. The mandates means mismatch tells us Why business as usual fails? And the imperative is clear. And partnerships are how we deliver, turning city innovation into national progress and global impact. So I think like here, I would like to quickly highlight how multi-level governance connects to the other two enablers that we would like to discuss, the transformative agenda-serving innovation and finance. These partnerships under multi-level governance operationalization create the space to test and scale transformative agenda-serving innovations, the approach that deals with the multi-crisis that we are facing based on a dynamic solution provision as opposed to static problem solving, and aim to transform the systems in our societies, the systems that no longer are working and catering to the needs. And then finance and with alignment in place, finance can move, eligibility is clear, risk is shared, and pipelines become more bankable. So we've recently conducted a study for Global Environment Facility to analyze the work of different national governments with their local governments on the premise of multi-level governance, but also some other international initiatives on par with the Sustainable Cities program of Jeff to sort of extract some success factors in terms of operationalization of multi-level governance, but also persistent challenges. So from our recent work with Jeff, three critical enablers of multi-level governance emerged. First, political leadership is key. Nothing new, but it's just like reinforced. Where governance innovation was prioritized at the highest level, whether national or municipal, projects moved faster with more clear direction and buy-in. Second, dynamic partnerships. Multi-stakeholder coalitions, especially those involving civil society and knowledge institutions, provided both legitimacy and implementation support. And then the third one was enabling policy environment, where legal frameworks were adaptable. Cities and ministries had room to experiment, co-create, and course-correct. This flexibility proved essential in context of institutional complexity. And perhaps the most important point, which is a sum of all parts, is that multi-level governance does not happen overnight or just like because it is recognized as a good concept. To enable it, you not only need strong institutional frameworks, diverse finance sources, data and capacity building, you also need time to map the priorities that are ever evolving, to map the decision makers and stakeholders and influencers that have a stake in any initiative or action on the ground, and to create a shared governance framework and mechanisms for measuring success. Without this, it's just an idea. So multi-level governance connects decision-making across tiers, ensuring that local action aligns with national policy and global goals while encouraging collaboration between cities, regions, and sectors all the way to the national level. It clarifies who does what, matching mandates with means, so local governments have the authority, capacity, and funding to act effectively. By aligning priorities, information, and financing, multi-level governance reduces duplication, bridges policy silos, which is really a hindersome factor, and enables coherent system-wide implementation. And it opens the door for partnerships among government, private sector, academia, and civil society, unlocking additional expertise, innovation, and finance that we need. In fact, I was just throughout the weekend reviewing the first order draft of the special report on climate change and cities that both here and Xiumei pointed out. And it was really pleasing for me to see that it was this report, the current draft of the report, is highlighting that collaborations across various sectors, especially between urban areas and businesses, offer significant yet largely unexploited opportunities to speed up the shift towards low carbon resilient cities. And a stronger framework of multi-level governance can facilitate the unlocking of the presently underutilized capacities of numerous cities in fulfilling global climate obligations. I was really pleased to see this, that it was actually a key point in the report. So through continuous dialogue and feedback across levels, multi-level governance helps cities and states learn from each other's successes and challenges, strengthening adaptive capacity over time. And effective multi-level governance obviously provides and creates the enabling conditions for transformative innovation across sectors. In turn, transformative innovation feeds back to reshape how multi-level governance should be operationalized, simply because different elements in question regarding multi-level governance are also evolving. For instance, institutional arrangements, mandates, or incentives sometimes transforming the actors themselves, such as shifting the local government's role from service provider to community enablers. But one may rightfully ask, what do we mean by transformative agenda serving innovation? Isn't it what is currently happening, the innovation? I would like to encourage you for a moment of reflection. Are our innovations serving the global agendas? So I just included the logos of some of the companies just as a way of really like a tangible thinking. These companies have changed the way but this is just a sample of many. They have changed the way we eat, we meet, we greet today. The oldest one in this page is Amazon, established 1994, still 8 years younger than myself. But the reality is the systems set up, the urban systems, the governance systems that are driving our communities were developed decades ago. And now we are just trying with the innovation, we are trying to optimize them. Or sometimes innovations like what you see on this screen is imposing some changes to these systems. So what I would like to highlight is that these changes, these type of innovations organically change or optimize the systems that no longer serve our community needs and priorities. And I think this calls for this question: are innovations serving global agendas? This is linked also to the question Sheer finally brought up in her presentation: are we building our cities for people? So when it comes to low carbon transition, this is a solid question to ask, which helps course correct when it comes to our mindset about innovation. To truly lead in the low carbon transition, cities must become exporters of the solutions, the type of solutions that puts human needs at the center, as opposed to merely addressing a need or actually creating a new need, which is unnecessary. And what we are observing nowadays with the social media driving and pushing our communities towards a dopamine-driven communities. This means that fostering a culture of cross-sectoral collaboration, bringing together different stakeholders from startups, universities, public sector, civil society, all around the same agendas that we all agree, and then direct innovations towards them. And when these ecosystems connect, they create the space for experimentation, for learning, and for scaling that drives the systemic change that we need. And I mentioned startups in particular are very crucial. They bring agility, creativity, and purpose-driven innovation. But what they act on oftentimes, it's based on what is considered as a value or as a priority in our communities. And therefore, embedding the global agenda into national level and local level agendas is quite important, because ultimately these are the incentives and these governments provide the enabling environment for these actors to come up with innovative solutions. But after all, purpose is over novelty, isn't it? So I think that's a nice way to come to transformative agenda serving innovation. What is important is to highlight that innovation can often be a difficult landscape for local governments to navigate. The word of innovation, this terminology sometimes loses its meaning and becomes just a box-ticking buzzword without really taking the spatiality and temporality dimensions of innovation into account. I've even heard of innovation being defined as the ability to overcome challenges that common sense would have prevented in the first place. However, it's important that we reclaim the term and use it to equip cities for sort of persistent and emerging challenges. Types of innovation, from incremental innovation, disruptive innovation, structured innovation, anticipatory innovation, or domains of innovation from social innovation, policy innovation, technological or technical innovation, cultural innovation. All of this, we are aware of it. But what matters is that the incremental innovation is not enough to address the climate crisis at the speed and scale required. And we also know that disruptive innovation is not useful if it does not push human needs at the center. I was again, like with this lens, I was reading the report and I was happy to see that the current SRCD's text highlights that in relation to acceleration, the transition to low carbon climate resilient cities, the scale of challenges required not only incremental innovation, but rapid transformative changes to effectively tackle the scale and complexity of sustainability issues. That brings us to transformative agenda serving innovation, the type of innovation that transforms our current systems and serves the agendas that we all agree globally. This is the approach that puts human needs at the core of the innovation processes and aims to create solutions that challenge the status quo, depart from reactive processes, and creates new possibilities for human development. This approach resonates well with how 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟 framed in her presentation, highlighting cities as transformative agents. So if we are asked why this approach, we can arguably say that for the low carbon transition, we have to go beyond optimizing our existing systems. We have to transform our systems. And in this way, we must move beyond the static problem solving approach, which is the dominant approach currently, toward a dynamic approach that addresses the disconnect across different levels of governments and enables the effective operationalization of the multi-level governance. And transformative innovation helps bridge the disconnect across these levels of government, obviously helping to align local experimentation with national policy and global goals. And in doing so, it becomes a vehicle for operationalization of multi-level governance, turning coordination into concrete action and enabling systemic low-emission transition. So I would like to here to sort of discuss a little bit about the role of boundary organization in this context. Obviously, we have international or intergovernmental bodies such as IPCC, which their role is to assess the scientific literature and put it at the fingertip of both academics and scientists, but also policymakers. That's why there is this summary for policymakers, oftentimes as one of the products of assessment cycles and assessment reports. And then we have the actors, we have local governments and national governments and subnational governments. But there is a crucial role for boundary organizations such as city networks, such as ICLEI, to play. And it's about supporting different actors in building the pull for transformative agenda serving innovation. I would like to highlight this case of climate innovation assessment tool. And I think this example shows how science can inform how cities strategically devise strategies and policies that can ultimately transform their systems while putting human needs at the center, which ensures meaningful transition at the local level. The climate innovation assessment tool I just included a screenshot here, is directly informed by the IPCC 6 assessment report. Its core elements are drawn from AR6, particularly the IPCC's understanding of transformative capacity and the shared socioeconomic pathways, which outline different possible global futures up to 2100. And the shared socioeconomic pathways, or SSPs, help cities situate their strategies with these broader global trajectories, understanding how social, economic, and technological trends influence climate outcomes. Together, these foundations ensure that science directly informs city action, guiding how local governments design strategies, policies, and incentives that can truly transform urban systems. I will quickly share the link to this assessment tool in the chat in case you wanted to take a deeper look at that. And sort of you'll see assessment also for the governments, but the focus here is on the cities and regions, and is particularly looking into sort of solutions leadership and the human that was driven from previous IPCC cycle, but also human needs. So this tool is basically based on a list of keywords which was compiled together with the IPCC scientists to reflect to the priorities in the cities. And the objective with this web tool is to explore how an expanded climate innovation agenda can inspire ambitious climate and innovation strategies. Only documents with inspiring content are shown on the platform, as the purpose is to provide information and inspiration for a race to the top, right? Rather than present a ranking of countries or cities or stakeholders. So I think this sort of slide also shows the IPCC's presentation of transformative capacity and shared socioeconomic pathways that I mentioned, which outline the different possible global futures. And this is a core element of this tool in the design of this assessment tool. But I couldn't help but just mention that currently we are building a community of practices with the city of Kaohsiung from Chinese Taipei, from Taiwan. And we actually ran a workshop earlier this year in Kaohsiung to sort of explore the commitments of the city based on this tool, and highlighted where they are actually doing a lot of work in line with what IPCC is suggesting, but also in line with core human needs, which was actually surprising for the city. And it was not only the city of Kaohsiung, there were a few other cities, two from Japan, two from Philippines, and also city of Newcastle from Australia, that we applied this tool on their strategies as well. Just to quickly showcase sort of what's the offering of this tool, helping cities to further build upon these directions in their future strategies and actions. So I'm just mindful of time. I would like to speed up a little bit to make sure I finish on time. Just a quick mention before we transition to the finance conversation. As part of that community of practice, actually tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, we are holding a 2-day workshop in person in the city of Kaohsiung. And that's also a space to bring scientists and innovation community with cities to discuss. And obviously, one of the key messaging for us is to encourage civil society and practitioners about the prospect of special report on cities and climate change, making sure that what is going to be out in early 2027 can inform their sort of actions and their strategies moving beyond. So far we discussed multi-level governance briefly, and then we talked about transformative agenda serving innovation. And now we come to finance as a third enabler. So if you already know what needs to be done and how, then the question is what is standing in our way. So the UNEP emissions gap report from last year states that to stay on track for global climate goals, annual investments need to increase at least 6-fold. And this is, I would say, even underestimated, just because this is literally the topic of my PhD, this whole financing world for climate action. But even if we put that report as a basis, this means that reaching between 6.7 billion and 11.7 6.7 and 11.7 trillion by 2035. Yet Climate finance flows remains both highly uneven and deeply misaligned, concentrated in a few regions and sectors, a point which SRCDs also highlighted, and the current draft, and often not supporting the transformative action cities actually need. So for local governments, this creates systemic challenges. Remember that only a maximum 10% of global finance for climate action reaches to the local level. Some other studies actually suggest that it's 5 to 6%. But nonetheless, the lack of enough finance and then the current structure of flow of finance to the local level is a key challenge in terms of low emission development and low carbon transition in cities. There is still insufficient commitment to financing urban climate action. Many operate in weak enabling environments where policies, regulations, or fiscal frameworks don't support investment, and capacity gaps persist at the city level, from project preparation to financial management, and overall capital mobilization and the capacity on that front remains inadequate to move from plan to real projects. So while the direction is clear, the financial systems that should be powering the transition are still lagging far behind the scale and ambition. And the sort of conventional finance mechanism simply don't suffice. So this is where the innovative finance comes to the picture. It offers the opportunity to fund transformation, not just projects, by channeling resources to a diverse set of actors from national level to local level. It empowers both individual and collective actions that together drive the systemic change required for the low carbon transition. And it also enables investment across the full spectrum of transformation. So innovative finance can target all key sectors from energy, mobility, building, nature, waste, you name it, that are central to resilience and mitigation and adaptation, creating integrated progress rather than fragmented outcomes that we observe. And it helps localizes access to capital by ensuring finance flows to all levels of governments, especially the local level where climate impacts are most immediate. The innovative finance can strengthen the ability of cities and communities to design and deliver solutions that reflect local realities and priorities. There are a ton of case studies out there that proves that the actions at the local level have supported this, and sometimes not in full alignment with the national level processes. And it addresses the root causes, not only the systems, the symptoms. It has the potential to be structured in a way to tackle the drivers of vulnerability and emissions on that front. And then obviously innovative finance gives us the tool to act before a crisis hits, not just after. And these instruments channel resources toward prevention and preparedness. And I think when we are talking about climate challenges, we know that they cut across different sectors, and our finance must do the same, right? Blended or pooled mechanisms allow us to design integrated projects linking energy, transport, housing, nature-based solutions, all of this. So investment reinforce one another instead of working in silos. And mechanisms such as green bonds, performance-based grants, and climate-linked loans build accountability and long-term incentives to finance itself by embedding sustainability criteria. They can obviously reward cities, institutions, and markets for consistent low-carbon performance. Just being mindful of time, I would like to come to my last slides. Hopefully this sort of captures some key takeaways, discussing from tackling the climate crisis, which is about transforming our current system, not optimizing them, and not only sticking with reduction of emissions, but also avoiding the emissions by the transformation of the systems. Talking about the three enabling levers for low carbon transition, from multi-level governance to agenda setting, transformative innovation, and finance, a traditional finance and innovative finance. And then the fact that these levers address three most persistent challenges faced by local governments: coordination, direction, and capital, as we discussed. And obviously discussing why multi-level governance is a necessity and how it enables sort of transformative agenda serving innovation, and how innovation can attract financing also through sort of innovative base. I put a pause here. Thank you so much for the time and opportunity. And if you have any question, please feel free to reach out, and I would be happy to take it offline. Thank you. Over to you, Wanyu.
Yeah, thank you very much for the very good summary about the local governance rules, especially highlight the importance of the multi-level governance and rather than work in the silos. Even so for the NDC that require the local government and cities to join to co-create the policy, especially cities, the place that the policy can be implemented. And also there are many other issues already summarized by 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗨, so I won't touch more on this aspect, and we are a bit behind the time. So I will ask for a very, very short break and for everyone to turn on your camera. And 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗏, will you like to take a group photos to make some records of this event? 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗏,
Yes.
over to you. Yes.
Okay. Thank you everyone for your time. So if possible, please turn on your webcam so we can use this special opportunity to have a group photo with our respected speakers. So please, if possible, please turn on your webcam. Okay, so I can see the wonderful screen right now. Okay. So, okay. Be ready? 3, 2, 1. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, again. 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I think we have really we have many audience and across different continents. So we are at different time zone. And now, because we are a bit behind the time, I would like to shorten our panel discussion to around 10 minutes. And for doing that, I would like to invite our speaker one by one to perhaps give some feedback or some reflection to the other speakers' context. So shall we start with Dr. 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗏? Yes, please.
Well, thank you very much. And there were some questions during the presentation. So just for the record, let me just try to answer those questions. There was an emphasis on health co-benefits of climate action and the role of that within the indicative policy of the agreed outline. So there was emphasis on health and well-being and health systems also in chapters 2 and 3 explicitly. And this is providing a basis to elaborate and expand on such emphasis throughout the report. And chapter 4 in the indicative policy of the agreed outline also has emphasis on the cost and benefits of action and inaction. So it is up to the process and the author teams and the evidence, the scientific publications to take this forward as they see appropriate. But it is a very important topic, I agree, and there's a lot of action around this. Also interactions of health and mitigation and energy access and air quality, all of that is becoming very important on that. As reflections, I would also like to just maybe emphasize one of my last points on the priorities of the Future Earth Knowledge Action Network. So perhaps I can just reshare that and really ask for all of you for your valuable contributions for these priorities, but within your different cities that you're coming from, how can we address the needs and accelerate urban sustainability transformations? How can we ensure equity and inclusivity? How can we amplify innovation from low and lower income countries, and negotiate complexity and systemic risks, and navigate global environmental change? So at this point, my intervention is more of a response to the questions and a call to continue this collaboration, continue the bridging and linking of knowledge and action, and maybe something that very important topic that 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗍 mentioned in her presentation: how can we increase these altruistic cities, maybe neighboring cities in the same region, different regions, to help one another? I think that's also a strong point of emphasis. And how do we link that to the solutions, the multi-level governance, the tools that are needed? So I see those as very important points of emphasis as a result of the webinar that you helped us organize, Won Yu. So thank you once again.
Thank you. And I'd like to invite 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗍 to give some feedback and reflections. 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗍, over to you.
Thank you, Remy. Yeah, this is I didn't expect I would be giving feedback, but I think the slide that's shared by Sia, I think if you can share it again, Sia. I would like to go back to that one. Thank you. So these are the 5 priorities that we within the Urban Can identified, to navigating global environmental change, but starting from actually accelerate urban sustainability transition and transformation, ensure equity and inclusivity, amplify innovation, and negotiate complexity and systemic risk, and navigate environmental change. I would just like to highlight that all of these 5 elements are really, really important in terms of the city special report as well. And I think perhaps with the exception of navigate global environmental change, not as strongly featured as our chapter, but all the other 4 elements are very, very strongly featured in the chapter that I am leading. So I think in that sense, there are lots of synergies in terms of research priorities and what we are covering within this special report. So I would encourage the urban researchers who are present today take a good look at this at this particular paper, which is the result of extensive process within this Urban Knowledge Action Network scientific committee, as well as broader community. So we do believe these are the some of the core questions that need to be asked for the urban science actually going forward, and they have very strong relevance to cities and climate change as well. And my second reflection, I think some of the things that mentioned by Poria, I fully agree. For example, the focus on the the political will, the robust funding, and flexible policy, legal framework, and the more of a transformative innovation, and then in questioning whether the innovation is really serving the purpose. I think these are really important questions to ask, and I thought it was very interesting that you actually emphasized that the purpose actually is more important than than the novelty, which I entirely agree, especially in the context of cities and climate change. In many cases, we do have the solution. It's not that we have to invent the wheel. It's really depends on the political will and how we can really spread this kind of innovation across different cities, so that most cities actually adopt this kind of existing innovation. So as I said in my presentation, actually this kind of adoption or contextualization process of new innovation in itself is actually equivalent to the innovative or innovation process. So we shouldn't take it as something that is just copy pasting or take it really lightly. Actually, this process in itself is a painful reconfigurating sort of process. So I think the boundary organizations, as you mentioned, Korea, like ICLEI, would probably be able to play a bit more stronger role in terms of helping cities to adopt, to spread this kind of innovation horizontally, a bit broadening innovation, sort of to play a bit stronger role in that. And I think it's beyond the current role of ICLEI and other city networks, but I would really like to emphasize the importance of, for these networks probably stepping one step further, look at how we can, really encourage cities to really, really work together and then build the, network resilience rather than, on top of just sharing plans and then learning from each other, but also act with each other. I think that will be the next step for these boundary organizations' role. So thanks for the really good talks, both of you.
Thank you, 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗟𝗍. And now I'd like to invite 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗍𝗫 for give some reflections.
Thanks a lot, Anu and 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗍𝗫 and Sharon. I think like 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗍𝗫 said it very well, and I appreciate that. And I think from my perspective, this special report on climate change in the city is just beyond an assessment report. I think what we are observing, in line with what 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗍𝗫 was saying, this has generated a lot of excitement within the city's networks and communities. And they are looking up more to the science to sort of direct their way. And I kind of feel this is not going to be only a report, such as the previous report. It's truly special because we all know that this is going to be probably the only report that in a meaningful way could impact the global stocktake 2.0, just purely because of the timing, right? Like the global stocktake will take place in 2028 before the assessment reports are published, and this is a great opportunity. And given the ICLEI's role as a focal point of local and municipal authorities constituency at the UNFCCC, with our peer organization, hoping that we can leverage this report as a boundary objective to reinforce the multi-level governance, but also reinforce new ways of collaboration, such as what 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗍𝗫 said, really connecting cities to come up with the type of activities that is sort of implemented by multiple actors, multiple cities, or a shared pool of resources by cities that no one single city can actually create or own, right? And also, this is being already sort of showing promising signs of an enabler for more meaningful sort of conversation across different levels of government. Sometimes we take it for granted that there is a proper conversation between different levels of governments across the world. That is not the case. Working with many cities in different countries, we see that in some areas it is very top down. In some other areas, there is lack of enough sort of modalities to sort of align meaningfully the mandate, the resources, the direction of the work. But obviously, after all, we are looking up to the scientists developing this report to, as mentioned in multiple IPCC press release, to make this report as policy relevant as possible. Obviously not policy prescriptive, but as policy relevant as possible, to sort of help the boundary organizations to produce meaningful tools or extract meaningful translations on particular areas and put this actionable knowledge at the fingertip of decision makers. This is the goal, and this is the hope that we have at the city networks. And we're looking forward to further engaging with this SR Cities report, and also not only from development perspective, but also in terms of what it means when it's already published. So the conversations like what we have today is very meaningful. We shouldn't look into that as an event, but rather as a connected series of dialogues to bring more practitioners and scientists around the same table to sort of establish this dialogue and make sure this will impact the decisions and actions on the ground ultimately. Thank you.
Thank you, 𝗘𝗫𝗖𝗍𝗫. I think you make a very good summary of the key issue here is that we need conversations and from different stakeholders and to find the solutions. And because we are behind the time, but I think there are still several audience stay with us until now. So I will still like to open the floor to invite any questions from the floor. If you want to ask question, please raise your hand by the button below. I think there is functions. Right. We will still let's allow for 3 questions. If there's any questions, please feel free to give your questions. Or instead, you can also type in the chat box.
I just wondering if there's time, no? I mean, are there really any discussion? For example, like we have around 1,700 municipalities in Japan, and 99.9% the municipality is going to have facing a depopulation, very drastic depopulation in the future. Are there any discussion on in the report about like shrinking cities? I mean, especially in the rural area.
I think this is critical question because many cities actually not growing but actually shrinking. So, can I
climate change
invite?
is very important, but the shrinking population is there. I mean, the most probably is coming. Almost certain. I mean, the very accurate, coming. Within 50 years.
Yeah, I think migration and shrinking is all the new challenges for many cities. So, yeah, may I ask Seer to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Ken, for the question. I know shrinking cities has been on the scientific community's agenda, on city government's agenda for a long time, and possible ways to still keep the city vibrant or repurposing some of the areas. So in AR6, let me start from there. In AR6, there was evidence based on the published literature on shrinking cities. In the categorization, there was also discussions whether or not shrinking cities could be there. We do recognize that there is like a cycle. Sometimes established cities then can transform to be shrinking cities. So this was discussed in AR6. In terms of the first order draft of the special report on cities, we're not able to discuss on the content, but if you and other colleagues as a reviewer would like to take a look, register to be an expert reviewer and see whether all the evidence that you know or there to be is reflected in the report, we'd be very happy to look into those comments and see how else the topic of shrinking cities could be addressed within the report.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and you might like to respond?
Yeah. If I can follow up on that point, I also cannot say much, but I can just flag that shrinking cities, just like growing cities, actually it is recognized as an important phenomena. But I think the author group are still discussing how exactly we cut this pie of different cities and everything. So hopefully by the end we can have agreed upon sort of typology and then respective sort of suggestions or properly dealt with this particular category of cities.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have one hand here, and from Jules, we would like to turn on your microphone. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you to all the speakers. It was really inspiring and I feel like I learned so much. So this is Jules Yenom with the Future Global Secretariat, and I'm the co-lead for research and innovation. And I had a question, it's a general question. I feel in a lot of the conversation, there was a kind of like this or kind of this feeling that cities have a thought of its own. that they have a decision maker at the top that sets the direction for a city. But in reality, let's say I'm part of civil society, who do I talk with if I want to enable change? Of course, there were many hints in the presentations. There was talks about we need to engage policymakers, we need to engage households, we need to engage corporations. But what do we see as really working? What are the enabling factors there that are really who's at the steering wheel behind cities? That's sort of my question there. Thanks.
Okay, I think this is like perhaps many questions from the audience because they are working from the industry and also some of them from NGOs. I'm not sure if I can invite Pauline to respond to this because you are working with local governments a lot. Perhaps you can provide some response.
Admittedly, I missed part of the question. I understood that, like, the question was partially because it was around who do I talk to, but if you could recap the question for me, that would be super useful. Or maybe
I'll simplify it a little bit just to make it easier. Let's say I'm 16 years old. I live in a mid-sized city. I want to see some changes. I want to see a better future ahead of me for the city that I live in. How do I start?
That's a great question. I'm not sure if I have I mean, that's $1 billion question. I'm not sure if I have the answer, but here's my perspective. The reality is oftentimes we talk about citizens' engagement and participation, but oftentimes it is very limited, right? And sometimes it's also not really impactful, or the mechanisms are not designed to really ensure the co-creations. Some countries, particularly in EU, we see that there are some promotion of projects that supports co-creation between citizens and active citizens and different stakeholders, chief among them local governments, on a given action or direction that city needs to take. I can just like being engaged with the European Green Deal very closely and being part of the assessment of the tools. I think I can recall the Rethink Action platform as one of the examples, something that I personally was engaged. This platform is online, and there's actually a MOOC for that the whole purpose was to create a digital tool where active citizens could engage with different stakeholders in designing any activity within a city to sort of make sure that the perspectives of the active citizens is heard. It is well reflected in the policies and strategies, but also it reflects the realities. To what extent it will be actually used by the city governments, as they are responsible for the decisions and regulations and allocating resources, that's a separate conversation. But what I find is like what is very useful, what we are sort of trying to promote within our network is to make sure that the flow of the information from the cities to citizens is not unilateral, rather is bilateral, so that it enhances obviously accountability, but it also ensures that the knowledge of citizens and their wishes is well reflected, and what we call active and aware citizens can play a role in the decision-making processes depending on the potential pathways and mechanisms that is feasible in a given jurisdiction. I see Shumei has raised her hand. I'm sure she has solid points to add, so I yield the floor to her.
Shumei, please.
Thank you. Now, I just thought I have a very short answer to this. I think the engagement platform Jorge mentioned is very important, but in the lack of such existing formal engagement platform, I think the most important or effective way probably is to reach out to your mayor, talk to your mayor, write to him, and even harass him. And on top of that, probably try to cultivate an ally or allies in the city government officials, because those kind of the leadership, political will, as well as some of the champions within the city government, I think they play really, really crucial role in terms of really moving these things forward. So I think it's important that There was a paper in 2015 by Karen O'Brien who talked about, individuals as political agent. I think in climate change, this is really, really important that you can, to exercise your agency and then reach out to your leadership.
And I see Sear also raised the hand, so over Sears.
Yes, I think that there's one more perspective to this. So in addition to contacting the mayor and reaching out, and I think institutions have a role to play. So just as cities, we were talking about proactive influencing and trying to get co-located companies there. Another institution that says cities are schools, there are universities. So I think institutionally, just some networks that could be initiated to partner with the city. For example, there are painting competitions. How do you envision your city? And there are so many other things, ways that youth could be involved in the city. When I was in one of the outreach events, for example, a sports team just wanted to share their experiences on how climate change was impacting their activities. So clearly, youth have a lot to provide, both their experiences, both their visions of how they envision the future. And in a sense, this does also need to be trying to align and be institutionalized. Either curriculum could be designed to have this co-creation process with more sustainable cities or settlements, or trying to address the needs. There could be internships, but I think that there needs to be more tools, at least, to enable the voices who would like to reach out to the cities. And maybe ICLEI could initiate some kind of a engagement with youth and include them in the citizen engagement process. Citizen engagement is a broad topic. Sometimes, for example, energy communities, where a group of residents decide to come together in energy community and support renewable energy generation, that type is also citizen engagement. But I think there's also a role to play for citizen engagement activities involving youth. And in that analysis that was done for these mission cities, I mentioned one of the favorable conditions that cities knew can exist is access to a growing, young, educated, and skilled population. So clearly, cities are seeing there is some potential here, but maybe not all of the mechanisms that could be initiated to capture their energy, their motivation to help is being realized at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Sear. Just want to, I see
One quick
another
sentence,
point.
and thanks a
Okay.
lot, Cher. I really like that. Maybe definitely like a great recommendation. Just quickly wanted to highlight that, ICLEI is currently working with UNGO, the official UNFCCC Children and Youth Constituency, to bring the voice of sort of a youth into local and global processes. So as an example, at COP28 in Dubai, we call it the climate catalyst, youth and local leaders. And we produce a practical guidance on that front, and also sort of we have this ICLEI's New Youth Voices series, which launched as an op by UNGO Cities Working Group. So obviously, like, these are not enough. Definitely, we need to scale them. But just wanted to acknowledge that the point that you say makes a perfect sense. And obviously, in our engagement with cities, in our own world congresses, or even the Resilience Forum for Europe, we always try to make sure at the high level youth has a chair, if not at the table, and they feel at least heard. But obviously, some of these are just like just to showcase the value, but how it works on the ground, it definitely requires a lot more efforts by different stakeholders engaged. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. I like to bring also local observations. Actually, in Taiwan, we have very strong NGOs. So for the citizens, if you want to make influence, I think the joint NGO sometimes can really catalyze some kind of change and influence the policy as well. And now, because we are about the time to close these sections, and I just like to highlight throughout the three presenters, I think there's one key word is about collaboration, cooperations, either internationally, nationally, or cross-sector. or government level is vertical or horizontal. All of this requires a lot of collaboration and also the conversations. So thank you so much for joining our conversation today. And hopefully, I think for the Urban Can, we will have several follow-in webinar like this kind, but in different topic. And we will invite you to join us again. So thank you very much for our distinguished speakers and our host, and also all the organizers and all the participants today. Thank you to stay with us. And I hope to see you again for our next webinar. Thank you very much.